Welcome to the Jones Zone, a podcast by Darryl and JJ Jones.
Welcome to another episode of the Jones Zone. We've got Andrea Freeman. She's an interior decorator. Her company is called Authentic Home. She's going to walk us through what it means to get an interior designer at your house. What's your approach to understanding your client's need and preference?
It's really in-depth understanding of who they are and how they use their space. That's really what it comes down to it. And also how they want their space to feel, you know? And that's a really telling question that I ask every single client is, how do you want to feel in this space? Do you want to be energized by this space? Do you want this space to feel calm, serene, that kind of, emotional tie to it, It really is very telling about what they actually want in the space.
I'm reminded too, has this ever happened to you? I'm reminded of a stager once. I was helping the stager and she said, here, help me move the couch in this direction and this, that, and the other. And I thought to myself at the time, I thought, that doesn't sound like it's going to look good at all. And she said, she was a friend of mine. She said, Get over here, idiot. Just help me move it. So I went over there and moved it, helped her moved it. And she placed a couple trees and some other pieces of furniture. And I stepped back and thought, wow, that looks awesome. And it would not have occurred to me at all. So I'm guessing has that happened to you where you told a client, look, this would be a good idea, do this, or that, and they kind of were apprehensive? Or
I'm very convincing. No, I'm just kidding. No, of course they're apprehensive, especially if it's like a space plan or a layout that they can't visualize, they can't imagine it in their space. I like to really talk about the why we're doing this, why it works, why this works here, why this works here. I give them visuals, visual layouts. We've even done, I've had international clients in the past, language barrier. And so we'll do like a photorealistic 3D rendering so they can really like visualize the space. But yeah, absolutely. Sometimes, they do have to trust me a little bit. Even after all of that, this is exactly why we're going to do this. There is an element of trust, but the trust comes from experience. I've been doing this for 20 years. I've seen lots of different layouts, and I can pinpoint what's going to work for them.
Yeah, my daughter was an art major.
Yeah.
And I don't know how we came up with this conversation, but we were looking at the iPhone, the Apple, and the design. And I said, that's interesting. When the leaf goes that way and the bite's over here. She says, oh, yeah, I forgot what she called it. But she said, no, there's something that your brain gravitates towards. In other words, you like not spatial recognition, but space. So the leaf went the opposite direction of the bite out of the apple. And that was very purposeful. That wasn't just an accident. And that was because our brains like symmetry or something like that.
Yeah, and sometimes also negative space. Sometimes our brains and our eyes do not want all of the clutter. And so the way something is laid out is really important to make sure it balances. Yeah.
Yeah.
The balance.
What excites you about the future of interior design? Here's my next question.
Gosh, there's a lot that is very exciting. Some stuff that's very interesting and we're not sure about how to feel. Mostly AI. People are talking about AI. I'm sure you're hearing it more and more in conversations with other professionals. I don't think that AI is going to take my place anytime soon. I think it's a useful tool. I think it's interesting to be able to maybe utilize it for drawings and different things like that. But really, I don't think it's going to take the space of a well-trained interior designer who can do some different things than a computer's going to do, of course, but also who can execute a project. We circling back to the project management part. A lot of my job is project management. Knowing it's like a symphony, really. It's like sometimes I feel like the conductor, and this is, I've got to make sure all the parts and pieces are moving and the furniture is ordered and this is measured and this is getting installed on this day. And AI is not going to do that, right? They're not going to show up and make sure to have a conversation with a tile installer on
not
site.
Yet.
Yeah. Well, not yet. No, that's true. I'll probably be long gone, hopefully, by the time the robots completely take over. But another innovation, which is kind of interesting because it's kind of a return to nature, a return to wellness and natural materials. And also people are thinking a lot about what's going into their home, especially building materials and things like that. There's new innovations right now where we're using more natural materials and combining them with other materials to make them stronger and put it together in such a way that it's environmentally friendly. A lot of people are thinking about wellness. I just went to a panel discussion about wellness last week, and it was fascinating because people are really taking the time to think about how they live in their homes and how they can use their homes to achieve more. So, for example, like, this is not like a fun subject to talk about, but we have an epidemic of mental illness in our country. It's really pervasive. And a lot of times, sometimes it comes down to the home and make sure that you have a space that you can go and be quiet in, or meditate, or do the yoga, or do whatever you need to do. That's becoming a bigger conversation than it's ever been.
Well, that's really interesting.
Yeah. It was really enlightening. I went to a panel and some top designers in the field talking about wellness and how, and again, that's always been my philosophy. I want people to live better lives in their home. But how to think about that in terms of, some different stressors that we face in today's world.
Well, that makes sense because, you can walk into a house like the house I described with the different flooring and just your whole vibe, your whole mood changes. So, it makes probably the most important part of why you get a designer.
Yeah. There's so many reasons.
What's the most rewarding aspect? You must love your job.
I do love my job. Yeah. I absolutely love my job. I have a different job every day, and that keeps me like fresh because I'm always working on different types of projects, small, big projects, different people. I love people. I love getting to know people, and pairing them with the right things for their space is a privilege. It really is. I look at it that way all the time, but I think the most rewarding aspect of my job is knowing that their lives are going to be better because of what we created together.
And they really will.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah. No, it's great. And that's the biggest high, is when I've just finished a project and I'm walking them through, the big reveal. I'm tearing up because I just did a reveal a couple weeks ago. It was really personal to me. It was a grandma, and she had the kiddos over a lot, and so she wanted to use one of the bedrooms, the guest bedroom, as their room, and they needed to sleep quite a few because she's got quite a few grandkids. And when we talked about the inspiration for the room, she was really like, well, I don't know. And we talked, and I said, what is something that you share with your grandkids, something personal? And she said, oh, you know what? I read Winnie the Pooh to them all the time, like classic Winnie the Pooh stories, and my dad did that. And it's something that is kind of a tradition. And I said, that's it. We're going to do this room as classic Winnie the Pooh, well, the 100-acre woods. So, yeah. So when we showed her the presentation, she teared up and I teared up. And that was just the presentation. But it took almost 2 years to get that room realized because they were building the house from scratch. So when she got to see it for the first time, oh my gosh, tears, like just flooding down, tears from both of us because it was so personal, because what we created is going to be used. It's living art. Those kids are going to be read stories to, bedtime stories, and play in that room and stay over at their grandparents and make memories. And for me, it's like, how could you get better than that? That's like the best thing ever. So that's the most rewarding thing, is making people cry. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I'm reminded too, around 10 years ago or so, I was showing houses near Disneyland. Yeah. And I went to this one house, and it was, and when you sell a house, you typically go in and you want to neutralize everything in terms of, you just want to neutralize it. So
it's a different approach.
Yeah, it's appealing to the broadest market. Well, I went to this house, and it was all Disney. It had Mickey Mouse in the living room, Daffy Duck in the family room, this, that, and the other. And I was looking at everything. I'm thinking, boy, this isn't very neutralized. And then it occurred to me, it was an Airbnb. Yeah. And it was just perfect because obviously next to Disneyland, and I've heard since then about Airbnbs being with that kind of design, it worked perfect. Right. I think it's sold for a very high amount. Yeah, no, there's a lot of fun themed Airbnbs in Orange County. Have you done Airbnb? I've done a few. And it's fun and different way to approach design, and again, you were just asking about the most rewarding part of my job. It's never boring. Sometimes I've done Disney themes. I've done Star Wars themes. I've done, different things
that are kind of outside the box of what normal, everyday design is. But that's what keeps it fresh and interesting, right?
Yeah, no, I think that would be phenomenal. So are there any ethical considerations or environmental principles that guide your design choice?
Yeah, absolutely. We were just talking about wellness. Also, sustainability is a big conversation, which we kind of touched on. One of the things that I think is often left out of that conversation about sustainability is really being thoughtful with the things that you already own. So, for example, I have clients that might have a beautiful antique dining room, but it's the wrong finish. It's too orangey and it's not going to go with what we're going to be doing. But we can talk to a refinisher about refinishing that and giving it a new lease on its life. That, to me, is more sustainable than even purchasing a craftsman-built custom table because you're still using materials. And so prolonging the life of what we have already in place, or really thinking and being considerate about the products that we're choosing, being more, we used to, and I'm sure, you grew up in a house like this, like our parents didn't change out the dining table like every 10 years, you know?
Oddly enough.
Did yours?
Well, no, my mom did. She did change the furniture around.
Oh, really? Okay.
Twice a year.
Okay.
She changed the living room. The family summertime, we'd move downstairs. Wintertime, we move upstairs. So oddly enough, and that's probably very unique. I'm sure that doesn't happen a lot.
Different. Yeah.
So tell me this. Describe a project where you had to work with a strict budget. What strategies did you employ to achieve a remarkable outcome without exceeding the financial constraints?
Yes, let's talk about this. I love this question. I love this conversation. Because when I think about budget, I actually like to think about investment range. And what that means to me is that what is it that you want to invest in your home and where do you want to invest it, right? So I'll tell you about a project that I did recently where this did come up because you asked me, about a strict budget. So I really believe that design, I'm going to get myself in a corner here, but I don't believe that design is a luxury. I believe that good interior design is accessible to a lot of different people that might not have considered it. And one of the reasons I think this is because we are using the principles of design to make things better, to elevate them, right? A project that I did, this was last year. It was kind of unique. My client was renting, actually, but she had been in this rental property for over 10 years, and she hadn't done anything furniture-wise or anything because it was always a temporary kind of thing, and, maybe I'll move and maybe I won't. And then she had this realization that she probably wouldn't, and she would like her space to work better for her, right? But she didn't have a Warren Buffett kind of budget, absolutely not. It was a lot different than that. So we made really thoughtful choices for her that would make a big impact. So investing where it would make a huge impact. You mentioned your yellow wall color. Yeah. Paint is very affordable, and paint can be transformative with a color palette, with the right color palette. So that's where we started, is really introducing color. We got, of course, permission to do that. But also we changed out the light fixtures. They were incredibly dated, and light fixtures are something that you can change out pretty easily. You can take down an old fixture. Even if you're renting, you can go and you can put that away in storage and switch it back out when you want to move out. But light fixtures can make a huge difference. Paint makes a huge difference. And then we made some really good furniture choices for her that were in an affordable range, but again, were furniture pieces that she's going to have for a very long time. So that's kind of how we approached that. I have an interesting story about how I approach my investment range that I like to tell. So if you'll allow me. So in the 90s, Sharon Stone went to the Oscars and she was wearing this impeccable suit and she was on the red carpet, and they asked her like, "Oh, where's your outfit from?" And she said, "The suit is Armani, the t-shirt is Gap." And she explained, like, why would I spend like, I don't know what, I'm not a big fashion person, but like, why would I spend $1,000 on a white t-shirt, right? When it's about the suit, right? It's about this great suit that I'm wearing. So for me, I love telling that story because that's how I like to approach my design. It's like, where can we splurge or spend the money that makes the most sense and makes you the best, overall, return? And then where are we going to use the Gap t-shirt,
Right,
where are we going to, so if somebody's doing great flooring, yeah, that's a big investment. That's going to be where we put some of our dollars. And then maybe we look at some other things and we go a little more cost effective. It's really, again, about the big picture. So I am very conscious of what my clients want to invest. And then I kind of hold their hand through it and say, okay, well, here's where that makes sense. And here's where this makes sense. And here's where we're really going to be realistically and how to approach it. We also talked at the very beginning about doing things in phases. So yeah, I approach it, one, where are we going to spend the money where it makes the most sense? And two, do we want to do this in phases, or do we want to do, this project and how we're going to, cut it up? And yeah, and overall, I try to make it really accessible for them. I am not interested. I know a lot of people have this misconception that I'm just like willy-nilly, like, oh yeah, I have this joke too, because with this one client, he was very conscious about budget, and he'd always be like, well, how much is that going to cost me? How much is that going to cost me? So I had this joke. I said, $1 million. and everything was $1 million. So he'd be like, well, how much is adding that going to cost me? $1 million. So the other day we were almost done with the project, and he goes, I'd like to add like a couple more chairs over there. I think that would be nice. He goes, well, how much does that cost me? I said, $1 million. And before I could get it out of my mouth, he goes, $1 million. So it's kind of a little bit of an inside joke, but I like to talk to people about the fact that interior design can be accessible. It doesn't need to be this big, that just millionaires and billionaires can afford it. I think it can be impactful for a lot of different people.
Yeah, I tell you, just like you had mentioned, just colors alone.
Yeah, I do color consultations too,
I was just going to ask you that.
No, but that's a really good introductory way to work with a designer, is just putting a whole house color palette together or an exterior color palette together. And really that gives you a lot of direction in the way that you're going to go. So yeah, I do that. It's a small project, but it's really great and it's really rewarding. And then they have a place to start from.
And that would be considered possibly your lowest.
Yeah, like an
lowest
introductory.
Budget.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's do a color consult.
Yeah.
And I tell you, right after seeing those colors, like I mentioned about turning my granite pink,
yeah,
it's worth it. Interior design often involves balancing aesthetics and functionality. How do you strike this balance? And Sharon, do you have an example that you can share of maybe a project?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things is that the balance between aesthetics and how it works is not like negotiable anymore, right? We live differently than we lived even a decade ago. We do a lot of different tasks in our home that maybe we didn't before. A lot of people are doing hybrid work schedules. A lot of people, I've done a homeschool actually a while back ago during the pandemic. I transformed a basement into a homeschooling center, because that's what my client needed at the time. So balancing aesthetics and functionality, I don't think is a negotiable anymore. It has to work together. It has to weave together. Another example of that is, the hybrid work schedule. A lot of people were working from home.
Sure.
And a lot of people don't, we live in Orange County and we like to, think about all those homes we see on all those, real estate shows and those giant homes. But there are a lot of smaller spaces in Orange County. And one of them that I did a while back ago, my client was working from home sometimes going to the office. There was no available space for really a home office. So we captured some of the dining space and made that into a home office. But we did so in a way that aesthetically made sense. It wasn't like we just plopped a desk in the middle of the dining room. We completely reconfigured the layout of the dining room. We made sure that the workspace coordinated with the color scheme and worked with all of the tones so that it's seamless. Of course, if you're looking at it too closely, you're like, yeah, that's a desk, not a credenza. But that's what works for the client, and that's what needed to happen.
And you have to look closely. It's not obvious.
Yeah, no, it's not obvious. It's kind of a little bit of a trick now. It's like being a magician, like putting all these little storage spaces into things that people don't notice, like built-ins and things like that. We can do a lot with that.
Yeah, I'm sure that the evolution of lifestyles changing, where so many home offices and people work from home and everything has changed your industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it has changed our industry. I think a lot of people are now going back, to the office and doing different things, but they still like to be able to have a space to do that in. And a lot of people really kind of discovered different things about themselves that they like. For example, like I have a friend, and she was a workaholic before the pandemic. She was always working, always working, always working. And then during the pandemic, dedicated more time to art. More time to creating. And so creating a space to create art in was an important thing. And I think that a lot of people are thinking of their space differently. I think I've said this a couple times, so I hope I'm not being redundant that people are looking at space differently. But balancing the aesthetics and the functionality of that is a challenge, but it is something that we have done a lot of, and that a designer can help you with.
And you can do anything. Someone can come to you. Forgive me for something
I do everything. No, I'm just kidding.
Naive questions. But I mean, someone can say, like Tuscany. I want mid-century modern. I want the, I don't know, tell me some styles. I can't even come up with names.
Don't even know.
I know. Tell me 5 styles.
Yeah. So I just did a home that was more in the, I would say, modern organic kind of style. I did a home last year that was really fun. It was in a Japanese Zen style. I did an arts and crafts style recently. Most of the time in Orange County, especially Orange County, people want more of a transitional look, something that's going to appeal. So they're not doing real theme, type of projects, but just more of a transitional clean and modern and coastal is really prevalent in Orange County. But
is there anything you wanted to talk about that I didn't ask you?
I'd love to talk about how I collaborate with real estate professionals. Yeah, because that's what this is, right?
That's true.
Yeah. No, so over the years, there's been a lot of different ways that I've worked with real estate agents, but last year I honed in on something that I think is kind of special. A lot of homeowners are going from a different space into a new space, obviously, but a lot of times their furnishings are not going to work. Their style that they had before might not work with the style of the home, and they're not quite sure how to really make their new house a home. And I had a specific client, and this is really why I created this. That was exactly the case. They moved from, a smaller house to a bigger house, and they had some great pieces of furniture that really worked with this space, but she wasn't sure how to really put it together, what kind of art was going to work, what kind of area rugs were going to work in this space, how to really put it together to make it feel like a home, because they had it that way for over a year because they were so in that kind of analysis paralysis, I will say. There's so many choices out there. She wasn't really sure which direction to go. So what we did is we came in and we made a list of exactly what needed to happen. Yes, the sofa was going to work. Yes, that dining room table worked great, but let's put a new light fixture in. Let's put some new colors in. Let's put some new art in. And so that wasn't an overall huge investment range into the product because she had a lot to work with. But it was really, she needed the concept to put it together. So we were able to do that. We were able to select the things that she needed to really put it together. We were able to have a team come in and rearrange the furniture, and another team come in and put up the light fixture and the draperies, and really transform that whole space for really cost-effective overall, as far as most projects, could be a little bit higher. And so I thought, wow, this is really cool. And I think that a lot of people need this kind of service. And so I started talking to more real estate agents about that. So I do, for new home buyers, I do offer a free consultation, which is not something that I offer to everybody. But if they're listening to this podcast, that could be something that they might be interested. They should definitely get in touch with me, because we can really do those projects pretty quickly. We haven't been able to do projects as quickly as we used to before shipping delays and all of the fun things that happen to us. And but those kind of projects, they have a quick turnaround and a big impact on how it all works out. So I call that the welcome home package, and that's something that I'm really passionate about. A lot of times also I work with real estate agents to get the house market ready, and of course there's the big stagers. I know you work with a staging company. They have a lot of inventory. They can come in and they can really transform that space. I think a niche that I have is really coming into a space that is going to be lived in through the process, and being able to talk to the homeowners about what needs to happen to get that home market ready without having, complete staging. So it's kind of a partial, and we talk about what should stay, what we need to put in storage, what we need to repaint, maybe a new light fixture, and I do that. That's kind of something that I think is unique, because there are a lot of staging companies, and they'll just come in there and, they work with vacant homes. There's nothing in there. But if somebody is going to live through the process, then they need to make sure it's going to be the best it can be. I offer a consultation package on that. So
wow, that sounds like a great value. Well, on that note, I want to thank you for being here. And
thank you. This is so exciting to share.
How can people get a hold of you if they want to contact you?
The quickest and easiest way would probably be through my website, and I spell it a little differently. It's authentic with a K, so AUTHENTIK home.com is the easiest way. There's a little contact me form, and we can set up a phone call, or we can email back and forth. That's a great way. And that's really usually how I start out with. I'm on Instagram also, so I'm trying to pump that up a little bit, so you can direct message me through there too.
And how do they find you on Instagram?
It's Authentic Home.
Oh, the same. Okay, same now. Oh,
it's pretty easy because I spell it differently.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. And please subscribe to the show if you have not. I want to thank you, Andrea, and signing off. Signing off or signing off? All right. You can get something out of that. Should I say it 5 more times? Signing off. Signing off. All right. All right. We're done.